Some women are born with diamonds waiting on their fingers. Aurelia Monroe was born with silence pressed against her lips. In the Monroe mansion, where the curtains draped heavier than secrets and every room smelled faintly of imported wine, Aurelia was the kind of daughter no one boasted about. She wasn't loud like Celeste or sharp like Grayson. She didn't demand attention. She carried it accidentally, like a spark that people saw but tried to stamp out. Her beauty didn't roar, it whispered. A tilt of her lips, a sway of her bronze skin under dim lights. The way her dark curls fell like a dare across her cheek. Men outside the house noticed. Men inside pretended she didn't exist. And maybe that was why, on nights when everyone else in the Monroe estate slept, Aurelia learned to romance her own loneliness. She would slip her dress off, slide under the silk sheets, and press her thighs together just to feel alive, her body craving a tenderness the world around her denied her. She never admitted it to anyone, but desire was her rebellion, quiet, secret, delicious. That was Aurelia, a woman made of quiet storms. Now here's where the strangeness begins. It was a Thursday evening when Vivian Monroe, her mother, poured herself a glass of Merlot and announced, "We found a solution for Aurelia." The family laughed, not because they understood, but because in the Monroe house, anything involving Aurelia was treated as a private joke. Celeste leaned back on the velvet sofa, red nails tapping against her phone. Grayson smirked at the mention of her name, as if even her existence amused him. Aurelia, seated at the edge of the room, froze. Solution? She hadn't known she was a problem in need of fixing. But Charles Monroe, her father, folded his newspaper and cleared his throat with the authority of a man who believed his decisions carved the world. "This weekend, we settle it." Settle what? The word hung in her chest like smoke. Nobody explained. They just carried on. Celeste showed off new designer shoes. Grayson bragged about a car upgrade. Vivian refilled her glass. And Aurelia, with her heart pounding, felt the floor beneath her tilt. Later, when she climbed the stairs, she could still hear them laughing. Laughing about her. And in the pit of her stomach, something twisted. The same ache she had carried since childhood, but sharper now, crueler. She went to her room, closed the door, and pressed her back against it. The mirror across the room caught her reflection. Wide eyes, trembling lips, a woman dressed in silk but stripped of worth. Aurelia slipped her dress off, not for vanity, but for relief. Her body, curved and warm under the glow of her bedside lamp, was hers alone. She ran her fingers down her stomach, paused at the dip of her hips, and thought about how different life might feel if just one person saw her, really saw her. Not as a mistake, not as a burden, but as a woman. Rowan Hale's face flickered in her memory. She had seen him once, briefly, at a party last year, standing apart from the glittering crowd. He wasn't dressed like the others, no gold watches or loud suits. His presence was quieter, sharper, like the stillness of deep water. His eyes had met hers across the room, not in curiosity, but with a strange kind of recognition. She remembered the heat it lit in her chest. She hadn't thought about him again, until tonight. Maybe it was foolish that his face returned now, when her family's whispers branded her unwanted. But fantasies don't ask permission. They arrive. And in that dimly lit room, Aurelia imagined Rowan's mouth against her neck, his hands rough and steady, his weight pressing her deeper into the sheets. She imagined how it would feel to be wanted, savored, consumed. Her body arched to the thought, her breath caught. But the fantasy slipped away as quickly as it came, leaving her with reality, a family plotting, a future decided without her. The next morning came with no answers, only instructions. Vivian appeared at her door, immaculate in silk, her voice crisp. "We're something neutral today. Don't argue." Neutral, as if Aurelia's very colors offended them. She obeyed, slipping into a gray dress and tying her curls into a knot. The car waiting outside didn't head toward the city's shining towers. It turned the opposite way, into streets Aurelia had never been taken before, roads cracked with wear, lined with stores where paint peeled and signs flickered. A bus screeched beside them, passengers spilling out with tired faces. A man cursed at his broken shoe as he tried to run across the street. Real life. Raw life. A world her family pretended didn't exist. The car stopped. Aurelia's chest tightened as she stepped into a narrow building, walls bare, air smelling faintly of dust. Inside, a group of men waited. Not the slick politicians her father entertained, but men whose hands showed work, calloused, rough, honest. And among them, Rowan Hale. The recognition slammed into her like a secret unveiled. He wasn't in a suit this time. He wore jeans, a shirt rolled at the sleeves, boots scuffed from use. But his eyes, those eyes that once caught hers across a crowded party, found her instantly. Steady, unblinking. Vivian smiled like a queen presenting her prize. Aurelia, meet Rowan Hale. This is the arrangement. Arrangement? Her pulse stumbled. Her gaze locked with Rowan's, confusion blooming into something else. Heat, ache, the dangerous beginnings of what? She didn't understand what her family was planning. She didn't know why this man stood here, waiting for her. But in that silence, charged and sharp, Aurelia knew one thing. Something in her life had just shifted. Something sweet, dark, and unstoppable. And for the first time in years, the outcast daughter felt a flicker of power, not in her family's approval, but in the way Rowan Hale's eyes lingered, seeing her not as the mistake, but as a woman worth the risk. The air inside that narrow building clung thick, as if walls could sense secrets. Aurelia's heels clicked softly against the worn tiles, but she might as well have been walking on glass. Every step cracked against her nerves. Her mother's perfume, sharp as citrus and roses, lingered beside her, while her father's presence filled the room like smoke. And then there was Rowan. He didn't move when she entered, didn't smile, didn't stretch out a hand. He only stood with that stillness that somehow made him feel larger than anyone else in the room. His gaze caught her, held her, and in that quiet lock something stirred, a recognition too deep to dismiss. Vivian broke the silence first. Aurelia, she said sweetly, though the sweetness was painted on. This is Rowan Hale. He's agreed to take you in. The word snagged like barbed wire in Aurelia's throat. Take me in? She turned sharply to her father, waiting for an explanation, but Charles Monroe only adjusted his cufflinks, as if this transaction required no dignity. You'll be married by month's end, Charles said. It's decided. Her knees nearly gave. Mary, the word escaped in a whisper, not from innocence, but from disbelief. She hadn't been kissed in years, hadn't even been given the courtesy of being courted, and now here they were handing her to a man who looked more farmer than groom. Grayson chuckled low in the corner. A charity case for the mistake. Seems fitting. Aurelia's chest tightened. She wanted to snap back, but the lump in her throat kept her words caged. Vivian swirled her wine glass delicately, though there was no wine in it, just habit. You should be grateful, Aurelia. Left to yourself, no man of value would choose you. Rowan may not have riches, but he has agreed to bear you. That's more than enough. Bear you. Like baggage. For a heartbeat, Aurelia's eyes flickered back to Rowan. She searched his face for disgust, for mockery, but she didn't find it. Instead, his stare was unreadable, almost protective in its calm. That unsettled her more than cruelty would have. Her phone buzzed faintly in her purse. Battery clinging at 2%, she pulled it out just enough to see a notification. Celeste had posted on her story a blurry snap of Aurelia walking into this building, captioned with a laughing emoji and the words, "Guess who's getting dumped in poverty skulldugg." Heat pricked Aurelia's skin. Even humiliation was content for them. Rowan's voice came then, deep and steady. "I didn't agree to a circus," he said, eyes sliding toward Celeste's smirk, then back to Charles. "If this arrangement stands, there are conditions." The room stilled. Nobody spoke to Charles Monroe with conditions. Charles raised an eyebrow. "Go on." Rowan's gaze cut back to Aurelia, and for the first time, she saw something softer, something meant only for her. She won't be treated like livestock. Not by you. Not by anyone. The words pierced through her like a blade wrapped in velvet. For years, she had swallowed silence while her family made her their punchline. And now, In this room that smelled of dust and betrayal, a man she barely knew set a boundary in her name. Vivian's lips curved into a thin smile. How noble. But you'll do as you're told, Rowan. Don't forget your place. Aurelia expected him to fold under her mother's ice. Instead, Rowan stepped closer, his presence pulling heat into the air. His arm brushed Aurelia's lightly, intentionally. Not enough to claim, just enough to let her feel the power in his proximity. Her body betrayed her. A shiver darted across her skin. Vivian didn't notice, too busy polishing her cruelty. This is settled. Aurelia, you'll pack your things. From now on, you belong with him. Belong. The words sank into Aurelia like chains. When they left the building, Aurelia walked beside Rowan in silence, her heart warring between fear and something else she refused to name. The city streets buzzed around them. A street vendor shouting about hot dogs, a taxi driver honking until his horn cracked, a child dropping an ice cream cone and wailing. The ordinary chaos of life. Yet she felt none of it belonged to her. Rowan opened the car door for her. You don't have to be afraid. His voice was quiet, but firm enough to make her pause. She glanced at him, and for the briefest moment, let herself imagine what his hands would feel like against her skin, not out of duty, but out of want. The thought scorched her, and she looked away quickly. The ride back to the mansion was stiff. Charles and Vivian spoke about dinner plans. Celeste texted furiously, no doubt feeding gossip to her friends. Grayson hummed a tune under his breath, enjoying the chaos. And Aurelia? She sat with her pulse pounding, Rowan's nearness beside her more distracting than anything her family said. His arm brushed hers again as the car swerved, and the accidental contact sent a bolt of heat down her spine. She hated that she wanted it to linger. That night, in her room, Aurelia couldn't sleep. She replayed every second of Rowan's voice, every flicker of his gaze. She hated the cage her family built for her, but she couldn't stop wondering if the cage came with a dangerous gift, a man who might undo her in ways she'd never imagined. Her hands slipped under the sheets, tracing the outline of her own thigh. She closed her eyes and pictured Rowan leaning over her, that quiet authority melting into heat, his mouth pressing where words could not. Her breath hitched. Her body ached. But she stopped herself. Desire was tempting. Reality was cruel. And Aurelia had learned that nothing in her world came sweet without poison. By morning, her family had already announced the engagement. No fanfare, no joy. Just a post on Vivian's social feed. Our Aurelia is finally settled. Simplicity suits her best. Simplicity. The word sliced deeper than intended. And yet, beneath the humiliation, something pulsed steady inside her chest. The memory of Rowan's voice declaring she wasn't livestock. It was nothing. It was everything. Aurelia didn't know yet if this bargain would be her ruin or her salvation. She only knew one thing. For the first time, her story had shifted, and the world felt less predictable than it had the day before. And in unpredictability, desire often thrives. Weddings are supposed to smell of roses, sugar, and promises. Aurelia's smelled a mockery. The Monroe estate had been transformed overnight into a stage. Strings of white lights draped across the courtyard. Waiters in crisp uniforms moved like ghosts with trays of champagne, and a violinist rehearsed beneath the archway. It looked perfect, but perfection in the Monroe household was only for show. Aurelia stood in front of the mirror that morning, veil pinned like a crown of obedience. Her gray eyes, so unlike her siblings' sharp blues, stared back at her. Her lips trembled against the gloss Celeste had forced on her. She didn't feel like a bride. She felt like a prop. Celeste burst in without knocking, silk robe flowing dramatically. You should be grateful, Aurelia. Not everyone gets a man who actually agreed to marry. She dragged out the last word, letting it sting. Grayson leaned against the doorway, already dressed in a tailored suit. Don't forget to smile. Guests need to believe this isn't a punishment. Aurelia wanted to break the mirror. Instead, she smoothed her gown, silent, because silence was her only shield. By the time she stepped into the garden, whispers followed like a tide. That's the Monroe girl? The quiet one. She's marrying Who again? Couldn't they do better? Some guests didn't bother to whisper. They chuckled outright, glasses raised like they were toasting her humiliation. Rowan stood at the altar, not in a tuxedo worth a fortune like the others expected, but in a simple black suit. No designer cufflinks, no shiny watch. Just him, tall and steady. His gaze locked on her as if the rest of the room dissolved. And in that gaze, Aurelia felt her knees weaken. Not from shame, from heat. Because Rowan didn't look at her like a mistake. He looked at her like a man stripped bare of patience. The ceremony dragged. The priest spoke vows that Aurelia barely heard. Her hand trembled when Rowan's fingers slid against hers. Warm, calloused, grounding. When the kiss came, she expected it to be a charade. It wasn't. Rowan's mouth pressed against hers, not desperate, not gentle either, controlled, deliberate, a warning that this wasn't just for show. Her body lit like dry wood catching flame. The guests gasped, laughed, murmured. Celeste snapped a photo, muttering content. Grayson smirked, but Aurelia barely registered them. For one impossible second, she forgot she was being humiliated. The reception turned into theater. Laughter filled the air, not the happy kind, but the sharp-edged laughter of people who came to watch a spectacle. A waiter stumbled, spilling red wine across Aurelia's gown, and the crowd erupted like it was scripted. Someone filmed it on their phone, zooming in on the crimson stains spreading across white silk. Tragic, Celeste whispered, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. She can't even wear a dress without ruining it. Aurelia swallowed the tears that burned her throat. But when she glanced at Rowan, his jaw was tight, eyes darker than the wine on her dress. He leaned close, his breath brushing her ear. "Don't give them the satisfaction," he murmured. The heat of his voice curled into her stomach. She looked at him, startled, but the sincerity in his gaze held her still. Hours later, when the guests had eaten their fill and gossiped themselves hoarse, Aurelia found herself alone with Rowan in the bedroom assigned for them. The door shut softly behind him. For the first time, silence wrapped the air. She stood awkwardly, fingers twisting at the stained fabric of her dress. "They laughed at me," she whispered. Rowan's hands flexed at his sides. "Let them choke on it. They don't matter." Her head snapped up. "Don't matter? They're my family." He stepped closer, eyes fierce. "No, they're your captors." The words struck hard. No one had ever dared to call her family what they truly were. Something inside her cracked, and with the crack came heat, raw and trembling. She turned away, fighting the tears. But Rowan didn't let her hide. He reached for her wrist, gentle yet firm, pulling her back to face him. "Aurelia." His voice was rougher now, lower. "You don't belong to their laughter. You belong to yourself." Her breath faltered. The way he said her name, it wasn't pity. It wasn't obligation. It was possession, hunger, reverence tangled together. Her gown slipped from one shoulder, silk falling loose. She didn't fix it. She let it fall, inch by inch, until it revealed the trembling rise of her chest. Rowan's jaw tightened. For a moment, he stood still, as though holding back a storm. Then his restraint shattered. His hands cupped her face, mouth crushing against hers. Not like the ceremony kiss, but desperate, hungry, claiming. Aurelia gasped, her body arching into his, heat flooding through her veins. The stained gown pulled to the floor as his hands mapped her, fingers digging into her hips, pulling her flush against the hardness pressing through his suit. She clung to him, nails raking his shoulders, moaning into his mouth like she'd been waiting her entire life for this. The bed caught them, sheets twisting beneath their bodies. His mouth trailed fire down her throat, across the swell of her breasts, teeth grazing until she cried out. Her thighs parted instinctively, welcoming the weight of him settling between. "Aurelia," he growled into her skin, his voice ragged. "Say it. Say you want this." Her breath trembled, words spilling raw. "I want you. Only you." The confession ignited him. He pushed deeper into the heat of her body, claiming her with slow, deliberate thrusts that built into a rhythm that stole her breath. She cried out, fingers tangled in his hair, her body breaking and blooming under his relentless pace. Every sound outside the walls, her family's laughter, the gossip of guests, disappeared. There was only this, Rowan's body inside hers, his voice murmuring curses and promises against her ear, her own cries echoing back like a song she'd never been allowed to sing. And when release tore through her, it wasn't quiet. It was shattering. Years of silence, of humiliation, of being invisible, broken apart in a single climax that left her trembling beneath him, her name finally spoken like it mattered. He followed soon after, collapsing against her with a groan, his chest heaving. For a long moment, neither moved. Their bodies tangled, their breaths sinking, sweat cooling against flushed skin. Aurelia's eyes stung with tears, but not from shame. From relief. From the terrifying sweetness of being touched, like she wasn't a mistake, but a miracle. Rowan pressed a kiss to her temple, whispering, "You're mine now, not theirs." And though the world outside still mocked, Aurelia clung to that truth, knowing the humiliation wedding had birthed something her family never intended, a love raw enough to burn through chains. The Monroe estate slept late after the wedding, bellies swollen with champagne and gossip. But Aurelia woke to the weight of a different fullness. The warmth of Rowan's arm curled heavy around her waist, the faint imprint of his breath grazing the back of her neck. For the first time in years, she didn't feel alone. The morning light sneaked past the curtains, painting her skin in shy streaks of gold. She didn't dare move. She stayed still, listening to the solid rhythm of Rowan's heartbeat against her spine. It beat like a drum, steady, protective, dangerously addictive. But silence in this house never lasted. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. A cascade of messages lit the screen. Celeste, hope you enjoyed the circus. Grayson, don't think one night changes your worth. And a final one from an unknown number, you'll regret letting him touch you. Aurelia's hand trembled as she read it. She tried to slip from the bed, but Rowan stirred. His hand caught her wrist before she could move. Don't, he murmured, voice rough from sleep. She froze. Don't start the day with their poison, he continued, his thumb brushing over her pulse. His eyes opened, storm-dark, still hazy from sleep, but sharpened by something primal. Stay with me a little longer. Her resolve fractured. She lay back down, turning to face him. His gaze locked on her like a tether. And in that look was the strangest mix of hunger and reverence, as if he couldn't decide whether to devour her or protect her. Rowan, she whispered, not even sure what she wanted to ask. He didn't let her finish. His lips found hers, slow at first, then with growing urgency. She gasped against his mouth as his hand slid down the curve of her thigh, pulling her closer. The sheets tangled around their bodies as his weight pressed her down, every inch of him hard, demanding. He kissed her like time itself bowed to their desire, like each breath was borrowed and too precious to waste. Her nails raked down his back, urging him deeper, faster. He groaned against her neck, his restraint thinning until it snapped completely. The world outside could laugh, could scheme, could send threats, but here, in this room, she was claimed again and again, her cries swallowed by the man who refused to let her belong to anyone else. When it ended, when their bodies lay slick and trembling against the cool sheets, Aurelia felt marked. Not just physically, but in her soul. And yet, even in the bliss, a sliver of unease lingered. The day dragged her back to reality. By noon, the estate was alive again with voices. Aurelia slipped into the hallway, only to find Celeste waiting at the stairwell with a glass of orange juice she had no intention of drinking. Well, Celeste smirked. Did you two consummate your circus act? Aurelia stiffened. Celeste leaned in, lowering her voice. Don't look so shocked. You think walls don't talk in this house? Someone heard you. Or maybe... She tapped her phone, screen glowing. Someone recorded you. Aurelia's blood iced. You're lying. Am I? Celeste's smile widened like a blade. One mistake, sister dear, and I'll make sure the whole city hears how desperate you sound when he touches you. For a heartbeat, Aurelia wanted to collapse. But then she remembered Rowan's voice that morning. Don't start the day with their poison. She straightened, forcing her tone steady. Do whatever you want, Celeste. It won't break me anymore. The smirk faltered, just slightly, enough to remind Aurelia that defiance, even fragile, could wound. She walked away before Celeste could reply, her pulse racing. That night, the Monroe family hosted a smaller dinner. Less spectacle, but just as cruel. Grayson sat at the head of the table, sipping brandy with leisurely arrogance. Celeste dangled her laughter like jewelry. Aurelia sat across from Rowan, tried to hold her spine straight while whispers buzzed like flies around her. Midway through the meal, Grayson cleared his throat. "Rowan," he said, voice smooth, "you've joined our family now. But let's be clear, your position here is fragile. One misstep, and you'll be gone faster than you came." Rowan didn't flinch. "I'm not here for your approval." The table went still. Celeste's fork clattered against her plate. Grayson's jaw flexed. And Aurelia, her heart lurched with a wild, terrified pride. "Careful," Grayson warned softly. "You don't want to make enemies where you eat." Rowan's hand slid under the table, covering Aurelia's trembling fingers. "I don't eat at your table," he replied coolly. "I eat where I choose." It was reckless, dangerous, and Aurelia had never wanted a man more. The rest of dinner passed in taut silence, tension so thick it threatened to choke. Later, in the privacy of their room, Aurelia pressed her forehead against Rowan's chest, her voice shaking. "You shouldn't have said that. They'll destroy you." He tilted her chin up, eyes blazing. "Let them try." And then his mouth was on hers again, devouring, desperate, as though defiance itself had aroused him. She melted into him, fear and desire tangling until she couldn't tell them apart. Their bodies collided with the intensity of people who knew tomorrow might strip them apart. He pushed her against the wall, lifting her with ease, her legs wrapping around his waist. She gasped, clutching his shoulders as he filled her, every thrust a rebellion against the chains that tried to bind them. "Mine," he growled against her ear, over and over, until the word lost meaning and became only sensation. And Aurelia, trembling, sobbing, clinging, whispered back, "Yours, always." Their climax came like thunder, shaking the fragile walls of their sanctuary. When it was over, Rowan held her tight, his breath ragged. "They won't win," he promised, though his voice carried the weight of a storm waiting beyond the horizon. Aurelia buried her face against his chest, knowing storms always came, and this one would not be merciful. The Monroe estate looked different at dawn. Dew clung to the hedges like silver tears, and the fountain in the courtyard coughed rather than flowed, its stone edges cracked from years of neglect. Aurelia stood by her window, wrapped in a thin robe, her body still sore from Rowan's relentless love the night before. He was already awake, buttoning a crisp shirt that didn't belong in this house of faded grandeur. It was the first time she noticed it. The fabric was finer than anything her brothers wore, the fit precise as if tailored. Even the way he adjusted his cufflinks carried an ease that didn't align with the story her parents sold her. "Rowan," she murmured, still husky with sleep. "Where did you get that shirt?" He glanced at her, then down at the fabric, a faint smile tugging at his mouth. It was a gift. She narrowed her eyes. "From who?" Instead of answering, he crossed the room and kissed her forehead, grounding her thoughts with the heat of his lips. "Don't ask about clothes when you look better in nothing at all." Her protest dissolved. His mouth always knew how to silence her. Still, as he walked out, Aurelia's gaze lingered on the shirt, a small itch of suspicion burrowing deep. By mid-morning, the Monroe mansion buzzed with the familiar hum of vanity. Vivian was hosting a brunch, insisting important people would be there. Important meant anyone willing to elevate her image. Aurelia sat at the far end of the long dining table, sipping weak coffee while the guests gossiped about stock crashes and charity galas. Rowan stayed beside her, quiet but alert. Then it happened. One of the guests, a man with thinning hair and a laugh like broken glass, looked at Rowan a beat too long. His smirk faltered, recognition flickering in his eyes before he masked it with false politeness. "And you are?" he asked Rowan, voice almost trembling. "Her husband," Rowan said simply. The man chuckled nervously. "Of course. Forgive me. You look familiar." Rowan held his gaze, unblinking. Mistaken identity, I'm sure. But Aurelia caught it. The way the man's fingers fumbled his fork, the way his eyes darted down as if afraid to look too long. Celeste noticed too. Her lips curved in amusement. Familiar. Perhaps Rowan has secrets he hasn't told us. Do tell, brother-in-law. Were you a model once? Or perhaps, her tone dripped, something less respectable? Laughter rippled, sharp and cruel. Aurelia's chest burned. She opened her mouth, ready to defend him, but Rowan's hand brushed her thigh under the table, steadying her. He didn't flinch, didn't rise to the bait. He only smiled, slow and deliberate. Let them wonder, he whispered low enough for her alone. Her skin tingled at the quiet power in his voice. Later that day, Aurelia found herself in the garden, needing air. She sat on the stone bench near the roses, her robe slipping off one shoulder. She thought she was alone until she heard Celeste's voice behind her. Funny, isn't it? Celeste said, swirling a glass of champagne, though it wasn't even noon. You, married to a man who wears silk shirts while pretending to be poor. Aurelia stiffened. What are you implying? Celeste tilted her head, eyes glinting with satisfaction. I'm implying that our new brother isn't what he seems. Men who command silence at the table. Men who make strangers nervous. They're not nobodies. Aurelia swallowed hard, unwilling to give Celeste the satisfaction of her unease. Even if he has secrets, they're his to keep, not yours to twist. Celeste laughed, a tinkling, venomous sound. Oh, Aurelia, you always cling to scraps. But when I find out who Rowan really is, I'll make sure you choke on the truth. She walked away, heels stabbing the earth with every step. Aurelia sat frozen, her fingers curling into fists. That night, Rowan found her pacing their room, restless. Talk to me, he said gently, shrugging off his jacket. She turned, eyes burning. Who are you, Rowan? You're not what they think you are, and you're not what you told me either. That man at brunch, he knew you. And Celeste, she's sniffing for blood. What are you hiding from me? For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he closed the distance between them, lifting her chin with his fingers. You're right, he admitted. I'm not powerless. I'm not the man your family wants me to be. But Aurelia, his voice lowered, intimate. I need you to trust me. When the time comes, you'll understand everything. For now, all you need to know is this. He pressed her back against the wall, his mouth claiming hers with desperate heat. You are mine, and I will protect you from them. Always. Her resistance melted. The ache in his words undid her. She kissed him back, her hands clawing at his shirt, tearing buttons loose. He lifted her easily, carrying her to the bed. The mattress dipped as he laid her down, hovering above her like a storm she couldn't outrun. Say it, he demanded between kisses, his breath ragged. Say you trust me. Her body arched into his, every nerve alight. I trust you. That was all he needed. He thrust into her with a hunger that bordered on fury, each movement claiming, branding, sealing his promise into her skin. She cried out, not from pain, but from the overwhelming certainty that she belonged nowhere else but here. The bed rocked, sheets twisted, her body trembling under his relentless rhythm. His name left her lips again and again, a chant, a prayer, a surrender. When release tore through them both, Aurelia clung to him, nails sinking into his back. And when it was over, he stayed pressed against her, sweat mingling, breath heavy. You're not safe with them, he whispered into her hair. But with me, you'll never break again. Her heart, still racing, believed him. Even if her mind screamed questions, her body trusted the truth of his touch. The following morning, Aurelia's suspicion grew sharper. Rowan left early, claiming he needed to meet an old friend. He didn't offer more, and she didn't ask, but she noticed the car that picked him up wasn't one of the Monroe's battered sedans. It was sleek black, expensive, and the driver bowed before Rowan slid inside. Jealousy brewed in her siblings as whispers spread. Who does he think he is? Grayson muttered. He's too comfortable. Celeste's eyes narrowed like knives. Mark my words, Rowan Hale is not who he pretends to be. And when I find out, Aurelia won't just lose her husband. She'll lose everything. But Aurelia, standing alone at her window, touched the faint bruises Rowan's mouth had left along her neck. She didn't care who he was. For the first time in her life, someone chose her. Not because of family, not because of wealth, but because she was his. And that, more than any secret, terrified her family most. The night smelled of rain, though the skies hadn't broken yet. Aurelia sat cross-legged on the bed in one of Rowan's shirts, the fabric swallowing her frame. She scrolled through her phone absent-mindedly until the battery blinked red at 3%. Another reminder of how life always seemed to falter when she needed it most. Rowan emerged from the bathroom, towel slung around his waist, droplets tracing his chest. Aurelia tried to act unbothered, but her eyes betrayed her, following the rivulets of water sliding over the planes of his body. He caught her gaze and smirked, tossing the towel aside. Staring again, he teased, climbing onto the mattress. She rolled her eyes, but her pulse quickened. Don't flatter yourself. His hand brushed her thigh, warm and slow. Then why are you blushing? She shoved the phone aside, battery finally dead, and leaned back on her elbows. Maybe because you're impossible to ignore. His mouth captured hers before the last word left her lips. The kiss was urgent, almost desperate, as though he'd been starving for her all day. She let herself melt, hands sliding up his arms, nails grazing his skin. His weight pressed her down, his hunger undeniable. But then, as his lips trailed down her collarbone, doubt crept in. The image of Celeste's hand on his arm flashed in her mind, sharp as broken glass. Her body stiffened. Rowan lifted his head instantly, sensing it. What is it? She hesitated. I can't stop seeing her with you. The garden. The photo. What if? He cut her off with a growl, pinning her wrists above her head. His eyes burned into hers. Stop. She wants this exact fear. Don't let her win. Aurelia's breath came in shallow bursts. Then make me believe you. Rowan lowered his mouth to her ear, his voice rough. I'll make you feel it, Aurelia. Every inch of me is yours. His kiss seared down her throat, his body grinding against hers until she couldn't think of Celeste or photos or anything beyond the fire spreading through her veins. He entered her in one swift, claiming thrust, and she gasped, arching into him. The rhythm he set wasn't gentle. It was a vow carved into her flesh. He murmured her name with every movement, his voice hoarse with need. Mine, only mine. Her doubts dissolved under the force of his possession. She clawed at his back, tears springing to her eyes from the sheer intensity. And when release overtook her, it was violent, ripping through her until she cried out, her body clinging desperately to his. Rowan held her through it, collapsing against her, both of them trembling. He kissed her damp cheeks softly. No garden, no photo, no lie can change this, he whispered. Do you hear me? No one touches what's mine. She buried her face against his chest, her heart hammering. And yet, when the silence stretched, a small voice in her mind whispered that passion and truth weren't always the same thing. The following afternoon, Aurelia tried to distract herself with the ordinary. She walked into town alone, hoping for a sliver of normal life. The bus she boarded was late, the seats cracked, the smell of oil and fried food clinging to the air. She sat by the window, watching strangers live lives untouched by Monroe cruelty. But even there, the family shadow followed her. Her phone buzzed with a message from Celeste. Enjoying your prince while he sneaks off in his black car? You deserve the heartbreak coming. Aurelia shut the phone off, throat dry. At a cafe, she ordered coffee, but when she reached in her bag, her card declined twice. Embarrassment burned her cheeks as the cashier sighed. Before she could fumble further, a man behind her paid, smiling politely. Happens to all of us. It was a small, human kindness, but Aurelia couldn't remember the last time someone outside Rowan treated her without mockery. She thanked the man softly, and as she carried her coffee to the table, she realized how fragile her world had become. One kind gesture felt like a miracle. When she returned home, Rowan was waiting. He scanned her face instantly, reading the weariness in her eyes. What happened? He asked. Nothing, she lied. His hand cupped her jaw, thumb brushing her lip. Aurelia, her body betrayed her. She melted into his touch, needing him more than she wanted to admit. I hate them. I hate what they're doing to us. I hate that I doubt you. Rowan's eyes darkened. Then let me burn their poison out of you. He carried her to the bed before she could protest, laying her down with a gentleness that belied the hunger in his gaze. His kisses started slow, reverent, each one untying the knots of doubt in her chest. I'll give you proof, he murmured between kisses. Not with words, with this. His mouth traveled lower, worshipping every inch of her body until she trembled with need. When he entered her again, it was different this time. Slower, deeper, each thrust deliberate, as though he wanted to stitch himself into her soul. Her cries filled the room, softer this time, edged with release instead of desperation. He kissed her through it all, never looking away, forcing her to see his devotion in his eyes. When they collapsed together, Aurelia felt her doubts loosen, though not vanish entirely. She clung to him anyway, because clinging to Rowan, even with uncertainty, felt safer than the world without him. And somewhere in the silence of their breathing, Aurelia knew Celeste's trap hadn't failed. It had planted seeds. Seeds of suspicion that passion alone might not erase. The storm finally broke that night, hammering the roof with relentless fists of water. Aurelia lay awake, listening to the downpour, her body still humming from Rowan's touch earlier. He slept beside her, his breathing steady, arm heavy across her waist like an anchor, keeping her from drifting too far into her own thoughts. But sleep refused her. The house creaked, the air smelled of wet earth, and her phone kept buzzing on nightstand. She didn't need to check to know it was Celeste. At dawn, when Rowan rose to dress, she stole a glance at the screen. Dozens of messages, each one sharper than the last. Ask him where he disappears at midnight. Did you know he met with my father yesterday? Poor thing, always the last to know. Aurelia shoved the phone beneath her pillow as Rowan leaned down to kiss her forehead. Going into town, he whispered. I'll bring you something sweet. When the door closed behind him, her heart twisted. He had promised her nothing but devotion, and yet every message from Celeste was a crack in the foundation she clung to. By afternoon, Aurelia's unease boiled into dread. A courier arrived at the cottage, dripping wet, holding a sleek black envelope embossed with a Monroe crest. No words, just a stiff bow before vanishing into the rain. Inside was a note in Celeste's unmistakable handwriting. If you want to know the truth about your husband, come to the greenhouse at dusk. Alone. Do not tell him. Her hands trembled so badly she nearly spilled tea across the table. The greenhouse. The one place Aurelia had avoided since childhood, its glass walls filled with vines that had always seemed to whisper secrets. She considered burning the letter, pretending it didn't exist. But curiosity gnawed harder than fear. If Rowan truly was hiding something, wasn't it better to see with her own eyes than to let Celeste drip poison into her ears forever? The rain had slowed to a drizzle by the time Aurelia reached the greenhouse. Its panes glistened like diamonds, and inside, the air was thick with the smell of damp leaves and jasmine. Celeste was waiting, draped in a gown of pale silk that clung like a second skin, a smile too sweet to be real. I knew you'd come, Celeste said softly, brushing her fingers along a row of orchids. Curiosity always wins. What is this? Aurelia demanded, though her voice wavered. Celeste's eyes glittered. A gift. Proof. From the shadows, a man stepped forward, tall, broad, dressed in an immaculate suit that reeked of money. His face was unfamiliar, but his posture screamed authority. He carried a leather folder, which he handed to Aurelia. Your husband, Celeste drawled, circling like a predator, isn't who you think he is. He's been hiding from you. From everyone. Aurelia's fingers fumbled at the clasp of the folder. Inside, glossy photographs stared back at her. Rowan, always Rowan. Emerging from a black car, shaking hands with men in tailored suits, standing before buildings she recognized from the city skyline. In one image, he was caught mid-laugh at a table covered in champagne flutes, surrounded by faces Aurelia had only ever seen in magazines profiling billionaires. Her knees buckled, and she clutched the table of orchids for balance. Celeste's smile sharpened. Not such a humble pauper after all. HM, while you scrub dishes and wear threadbare clothes, he slips into the city to live the life he really belongs to. You've been nothing but a prop. That's a lie, Aurelia whispered, though her throat was dry, her heart slamming like a fist. Is it? Celeste purred, stepping closer. He swore you were his salvation, but tell me, why didn't he tell you the truth himself? Why let you live in filth when he dines in velvet? Aurelia wanted to scream, to claw Celeste's smug face, but the photographs in her trembling hands burned hotter than her anger. If Rowan was hiding this, why? Before she could speak, Celeste's trap twisted tighter. A door at the far end of the greenhouse creaked, and Rowan himself stepped in, rain dripping from his coat. His eyes locked on the scene instantly. Aurelia pale as snow, clutching the folder, Celeste smirking like a queen on her throne. For one suspended breath, none of them moved. Then Rowan's jaw set, his voice a growl. Celeste, what have you done? Celeste's laugh rang out, brittle and cruel. Only what you were too cowardly to do yourself. Tell her the truth. Aurelia's voice broke. Rowan, is it true? His gaze softened at her. Even his fury bled into every line of his body. He took a step forward, hand outstretched. Let me explain. But Celeste moved faster. She plucked one of the photographs from Aurelia's grasp and waved it like a flag. Explain what? That you're a liar? That you've been living two lives while she plays the devoted fool? The storm outside rose again, thunder rattling the glass walls. Aurelia's chest constricted, torn between the memory of Rowan's hands anchoring her through passion and the cold evidence pressed against her skin. Rowan's eyes locked on hers. Don't listen to her. Not like this. Please, Aurelia. But Celeste, satisfied with the fracture she'd carved, leaned close enough for Aurelia to feel her perfume. Sweetheart, she whispered, you've been sleeping with a stranger. Aurelia fled before Rowan could reach her. Her shoes slipped on the wet stones, her lungs burning as she ran through the gardens. Behind her, she thought she heard Rowan call her name, raw and desperate, but the sound of the storm swallowed him whole. By the time she stumbled back into the cottage, soaked to the bone, she dropped the folder onto the floor like it carried fire. Pages fanned across the wood, glossy proof of everything Celeste had said. Her phone buzzed again on the nightstand, battery clinging to its last breath. Another message from Celeste. Told you. He's been laughing at you all along. Aurelia smashed the phone against the wall. The screen shattered, sparks of glass scattering like stars. Her chest heaved, her heart refusing to choose between fury and longing. For the first time since marrying Rowan, she wondered if she'd been nothing more than a pawn in a game she never understood. And in the darkness of the storm, she prayed, half in rage, half in despair, that Rowan would knock on that door and tell her it was all a lie. But the knock never came. The rain had slowed to a mist by the time Aurelia curled on the floor, knees pulled to her chest. The folder of photographs spread like scattered accusations around her. Her body shook, not from the cold soaking her dress, but from the hollowness inside her. The cottage felt too small, too silent, as though waiting to witness her shatter. Then came a knock. Sharp, relentless. She froze. Aurelia. Rowan's voice cut through the door, hoarse and ragged. Open this. Please. She pressed her forehead against her knees, ignoring him. Another knock. Louder. Then the handle rattled violently, the wood groaning under his strength. Finally, with a crack, the door burst inward. Rowan stumbled in, rain plastering his hair to his face, his eyes wild with desperation. Her gaze shot up, fury colliding with a raw ache in her chest. Get out. No. He slammed the door behind him, locking it. Not until you hear me. She scrambled to her feet, shoving one of the photographs against his chest. What is this, Rowan? Who the hell are you? The photo slid to the floor between them. Rowan didn't flinch. He stepped closer, dripping water across the wood. It's me. All of it is me. But not the way she twisted it. Twisted. Her laugh cracked like glass. You let me believe you were broke. That we had nothing. And all this time, you've been dining in velvet and silk. He caught her wrists before she could hurl another photograph at him. His grip was firm, trembling. Listen to me. I built a life before you, yes. A life I hated. A world of greed, backstabbing, endless hunger for more. I left it, Aurelia. I walked away. I chose you. She tried to wrench free, but his strength caged her. You should have told me. Do you know what Celeste made me feel tonight? Like a fool. Like a woman who doesn't even know the man she sleeps beside. His jaw clenched. Celeste has always wanted to break you. Don't let her win. Her eyes brimmed, anger blurring with pain. Then tell me the truth. Everything. Now. Rowan's chest rose and fell like a storm still trapped in his ribs. He released her wrists slowly, as though afraid she'd vanish. Then he sank into a chair by the window, dragging his wet hair back. For the first time, he looked weary, not the man who had always seemed unshakable in her arms, but someone carrying a weight he had hidden too long. I was born into money, he began, voice low. Not the kind your family clings to. Bigger. My father owns half the high-rises in the city. I grew up with security guards outside my classrooms, yachts instead of summer camps. But every smile I saw came with a contract. Every kiss from a woman was a transaction. I hated it. So I walked away. Aurelia's pulse hammered. Walked away to what? Pretend to be poor. I wanted something real. Rowan said fiercely, eyes burning into hers. I want to know if love could exist without gold laced through it. And then, there was you. Her lips parted, but no words came. Rowan pushed on, his voice raw. When I married you, I swore I'd keep my past buried. Not because I didn't trust you, because I didn't want that world infecting us. I wanted us clean, untouched by their greed. I thought, his voice cracked. I thought hiding it was protecting you. Her heart twisted at the cracks in his tone, but rage still smoldered. You let me scrub dishes with bleeding hands while you sat on a fortune. That's not protection, Rowan. That's cruelty. He shot to his feet, closing the space between them in 2 strides. His hands framed her face, not gentle, but desperate. No, what's cruel is your family throwing you away like trash, when you're the only thing worth a damn in this poison world. What's cruel is Celeste dangling lies before you. What I did because I love you. His mouth crushed against hers before she could protest. The kiss wasn't sweet. It was battle, plea, confession. She shoved at him once, twice, but then her body betrayed her. The anger melted under the force of his hunger, the same hunger that had claimed her in the dark countless times. Her lips opened, her hands clutching his soaked shirt, dragging him closer despite herself. They staggered toward the bed, clothes clinging to wet skin, the taste of rain between their mouths. He tore the dress from her body with trembling hands, his lips tracing every inch like an apology. Mine, he whispered against her skin, with or without money, with or without masks. Mine, she moaned, part fury, part surrender, as he slid into her. The rhythm was fevered, relentless, like he was trying to carve truth into her bones with every thrust. She clung to him, nails biting his shoulders, tears streaming even as her body arched in pleasure. When release overtook her, it was violent, a scream ripped from her throat that blurred love and grief into one. Rowan held her through it, shuddering as his own release broke, their bodies collapsing into trembling silence. For a long while, only the patter of mist against the window filled the room. Aurelia lay with her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat thunder like a drum. She wanted to believe him, wanted to believe love could exist above lies. But the photographs still lay scattered across the floor, proof that their world was built on half-truths. Rowan's voice finally broke the silence. Tomorrow, I'll show you everything. No more hiding. You'll see exactly who I am, what I walked away from, and why I chose you over it all. Her throat tightened. Tomorrow. That word felt like both a promise and a threat. She closed her eyes, not trusting herself to speak. And as Rowan's arms tightened around her, Aurelia wondered if love alone could survive the empire of lies about to crash down upon them. The Monroe estate blazed with light that night, chandeliers spilling golden fire on marble floors polished to mirrors. The annual family gala was the one night of the year Everyone sharpened their smiles into weapons. Aurelia had always dreaded it, though she hadn't expected to be invited this time. Yet the invitation had arrived, hand-delivered, sealed in wax. Rowan insisted they attend. "They expect you to hide," he told her, fastening the delicate clasp of her gown with steady hands. "But tonight you walking beside me." His words sounded like armor, but Aurelia's stomach twisted. The folder of photographs still haunted her. She had agreed to come, though a part of her feared it was walking into Celeste's trap all over again. The ballroom hummed with violin strings and murmured gossip. Pearls and diamonds glimmered at every throat, every wrist. Aurelia clung to Rowan's arm, ignoring the way heads turned and whispers rippled like a tide. "Look who crawled back," one aunt sneered behind her fan. Still wearing borrowed gowns, another chimed, eyes glittering. Celeste appeared at the center of it all, her gown a silken scarlet, her smile sharp enough to cut glass. "Darling cousin," she cooed, kissing Aurelia's cheek with lips that dripped poison. "Brave of you to come. Does poverty taste sweeter when shared?" Aurelia stiffened, but Rowan only smirked, brushing a thumb across her knuckles in silent command. Patience. The evening unfolded like theater. Toasts, laughter that masked venom, all of it circling Aurelia like wolves sniffing weakness. She endured, her chest tight, until the master of ceremonies tapped his glass for attention. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "tonight we welcome back not only our beloved Monroe kin, but her husband." His hesitation was deliberate, dripping disdain. "Rowan, wasn't it?" Snickers rippled through the crowd. Rowan released Aurelia's hand and stepped forward. The hall stilled as though even the violins sensed a shift. His voice, when he spoke, carried like thunder restrained. "You've spent months mocking the woman who stands beside me," he said, gaze sweeping the room. "You've spat at her, called her less than you, treated her marriage as a stain on your pride." Celeste's smile faltered. "And what of it?" Rowan's lips curved, dangerous. "The thing about masks, Celeste, is they eventually come off." From entrance doors, a procession strode in, men and women in tailored suits, carrying briefcases embossed with crests no Monroe dared ignore. Behind them came photographers, flashes igniting like fireworks. Murmurs erupted. Aurelia's breath hitched. Rowan stepped into the blaze of cameras, straightening to his full, imposing height. "Allow me to reintroduce myself," he said, every syllable measured steel. "Rowan Blackthorne, CEO of Blackthorne Holdings, owner of the skyscrapers you lease your offices in, the banks you mortgage your homes through, and the press that prints your scandals." The ballroom froze. Someone gasped audibly. Celeste's glass slipped from her fingers, shattering against marble. Aurelia's knees nearly gave out. The name was legend. She had heard it whispered in newsrooms, headlines, boardrooms. The Blackthorne Empire was whispered about like myth, untouchable wealth and power. And Rowan, her Rowan, he turned, eyes finding hers across the silence. "You thought I came to you with nothing. The truth is, I walked away from everything for her." Every camera flash caught the look in his eyes, raw and unguarded. Celeste recovered enough to spit. "This is some trick. You expect us to believe." But one of the suited men stepped forward, producing documents, seals, signatures. "Blackthorne Holdings confirms Mr. Rowan Blackthorne is its sole heir and acting chairman. His presence here is no fabrication." Aunties who had laughed minutes earlier now pressed hands to throats. Uncles who had dismissed Aurelia as worthless now stammered, their voices tripping over apologies that never left their mouths. Celeste's face drained of color, her poise cracking. "You lied to me, to all of us." Rowan's smile turned razor-sharp. "I didn't lie. I simply never owed you the truth." He crossed back to Aurelia, his hand sliding firmly into hers, pulling her into the light of the cameras. "But I owed it to her, and tonight she has it. She is not your discarded cousin. She is my wife, my equal, my queen." The word struck like a thunderclap. For the first time in her life, Aurelia watched her family's eyes lower, not in pity or mockery, but shame. Celeste staggered back, her lips trembling. "You chose her over me, over all of us." Rowan didn't even glance her way. His lips found Aurelia's in a kiss meant for every camera, every whisper, every poisonous tongue in the room. It was fierce, unashamed, sealing the truth in front of the world. Aurelia melted into it, tears spilling unchecked, her body trembling with the release of months of humiliation and doubt. When they finally broke apart, her chest heaved, her heart steady for the first time. Rowan whispered against her ear, low enough only she could hear, "They'll regret every bruise they left on your soul." Starting tonight. By the time the ballroom erupted in chaos, half the family rushing to apologize, half too stunned to speak, Aurelia no longer cared. She clung to Rowan, her mind replaying his words, his revelation, his choice. Later, when the cameras dimmed and the guests scattered in shame, Rowan led her outside into the cool night air. The estate lights burned behind them, but in the darkness, they were just two people again, his hand warm against her cheek. "I should have told you sooner," he murmured. "I nearly lost you because of my silence." Her lips trembled. "You nearly did." He kissed her gently this time, nothing like the firestorm in the ballroom. Just soft, steady a promise. Never again. No more secrets. She leaned into him, her voice breaking with relief. "Then take me home. Our home, not theirs." Rowan smiled, pulling her against his chest as the night swallowed them whole. Behind them, the Monroe estate rang with the bitter taste of regret. And for the first time, Aurelia didn't carry the weight of their scorn. She carried the certainty that love, even forged in lies and shadows, could emerge blazing, untouchable,